Welcome back. It is good to be in the house of the Lord. It is a beautiful day today. I hope that you had great time with your family. We would like to start with a word of prayer. And we're going to sing later, and then we're going to have our seminar. So let's just bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for one more opportunity to be in your presence. It is so good to know that we have been invited by you to be before the throne of grace. And now we are going to sing and praise your name. You're worthy of our praise, Father. And we're thankful, especially for Jesus Christ and for what he has done for us. So accept, Father, our praise and our worship at this moment. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
If you want to sing along with us, please open your hymnals, which is something we haven't used in a while, on hymn 290. If you know the song by heart, great, but if you don't, please just follow along and sing with us.
And if you know the parts, you can add those as well. Oh, soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things on earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Through death into life everlasting, he passed and we follow him there. Over sin no more have dominion, for more than a conquerors we are. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things on earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. His word shall not fail in his promise. Believe him and all will be well. Then go to a world that is dying, his perfect salvation to tell. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things on earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.
Amen. Let us stand and sing hymn 526, Before He Lives. Because, not before.
God sent his son,
They called him Jesus.
He came to to love, heal and forgive. He lived and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is just the living just because He lives. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy He gives, but greater still, the calm assurance this child can face uncertain days because He lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all sin is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives.
Amen. You may be seated.
All right, well, it is good to be here again. Like I mentioned earlier, Laura and I have been cousins since she was born. And every once in a we grew up kind of singing together. We sang in the same group when we were in college together. Obviously, you know, over the last several years, we've been living further apart. So it's always nice when we come together and we get to sing something together. And this song was, in case you didn't know, we're both from Brazil originally. And this song that we're going to do is actually a song that was written in Portuguese that was translated into English about 20 years ago. And it's based on the parable of the lost sheep in Luke 15. And it's just such a very sweet reminder that it doesn't matter how far we've gone or how rock bottom we can hit, we always have the assurance that God is waiting there to embrace us, forgive us, and bring us back home. This is called The Wayward Lamb.
I have been a wayward lamb, from the shepherd gone astray. I chose to follow my own senses, found it useless to obey. Step by step I left my master, and before I was aware, I was lost within the darkness, filled with anguish and despair. And amidst these unknown dangers, I was tired and afraid. So I longed to reach the shelter, but I
could not find my way. Oh, why did I leave my master? Oh, how foolish I have been. If I only could go back, I would never leave again. Then I heard way in the distance such a sweet and lovely sound. It was the voice of my dear shepherd, and I knew I would be found. When he saw me, he came running and took me in his embrace. Even though I was not worthy, I was rescued by his grace. Still I live in my transgression, and I weep in my regret. But he lovingly forgives me. With his blood he paid my debt. There is comfort in his presence. What could possibly go wrong? In his arms I find compassion and a place where I belong. In his arms I find compassion and a place where I belong.
I'm going to ask that pianist to stay up there for a little bit. I heard some chord progressions there on Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but music therapy is one of the ways of enhancing the frontal lobe and actually helping to get rid of depression and anxiety. By the way, it is on now? No? Should I get a microphone? It's on? Okay. All right. Yeah, so music therapy is one of the ways of enhancing the frontal lobe, getting rid of depression and anxiety. And by the way, thank you for those wonderful, well-sung numbers. It reminded me, I was in Brazil right before COVID, speaking at one of our largest Adventist universities in Unesp. And you know how you can make a kind of a relationship with your translator. The translator was part of the language department, and every nuance that I gave, he put it into Portuguese. And you can still see it for those that are Brazilians. It's or Portuguese. There's many that watch it. It's called the Unesp and the Dr. Nedley series that we were there for an entire week for. And the last talk I gave was on the frontal lobe of the brain. And I'm actually not a language expert, unfortunately. My mother, when growing up, I grew up in middle America, actually northern middle America, Detroit. My father was an engineer for General Motors. And she said, you need to learn languages. You need to learn Spanish. You need to learn German. I said, I'm in America and I have no intentions of going outside of America. And I don't know why in the world I need to learn these other languages. And so I refused to learn any languages. And then after I reached my career and was asked to go to all of these places, I would think, wow, I would pay $1 million to know Spanish right now. I would pay $1 million to know German or Portuguese. if I could just know it instantaneously. But the last presentation I gave on the frontal lobe of the brain, it was his first mistranslation of the entire week. And somehow God helped me to understand it was a very vital thing. And as soon as he said it, I said, no. And I repeated what I said in English, and he says, oh. And then he translated it correctly. And he said, the only mistake I made, and you caught it, and it was in Portuguese, even though it's not my native language, but there's some similarities enough that you could detect it. But what I wanted to illustrate here, I know we're going to talk about nutrition. What is the number of turn your eyes upon Jesus? 290. And I don't know if this gentleman will know where it is, but it was like 3 or 4 chord progressions as we were going from one to another. And this is something that can help from one phrase to another. And it is your anticipation of these types of things that actually enhance dopamine activity. It actually enhances your motivation. I was able to study under what was called the mother of music therapy in the world. She started more music therapy programs than anywhere else. And when I lived in Oklahoma, the last one she started was at Phillips University. And she started PhD music therapy programs. So I learned those 6 principles of very healthy music that are going to enhance it. But I just thought it would be good for us to listen to that chord progression again. Do you remember where you did it? I know you're playing by ear. He doesn't even remember. Okay. Joel, do you remember what portion it was? So let's start singing it maybe. So, weary and troubled, no light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. I think it may have been something like that. But it had actually even more chord structure in there. Let's try that again. Life more abundant and free. Fill that out. I want my dopamine levels to go up a little more. And I can tell he plays by ear. He doesn't play by note. But before turn your eyes. And let's see. Okay, we can do it again. No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. So when you're anticipating a particular chord or a move, by the way, thank you very much. But when you're anticipating that and you get another harmony, particularly when it's not too close to each other, what we call a consonant harmony that brings out some new meaning, it actually stimulates your dopamine activity. And he was doing that for me in that number, and that's one of the things that we like to illustrate. But I can tell it was all natural. It wasn't something that was written in the piece. So We mentioned we're going to talk about neuroplasticity as well, besides nutrition. But there are some things that get the brain ready for change. One of the things that's been shown to really help turn on the positive neuroplasticity switches in the brain is actually fasting. When you're fasting, you start burning fat and you go into ketosis and you start increasing a protein in your brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that helps the brain to learn new things and get ready. Now, we don't fast everyone that comes to our program, but if they can fast, in other words, if they have some reserves and they're willing to take advantage of those reserves to go into a fasting state, we might fast them for a full 24, sometimes 36 hours. And then we'll actually fast them on a daily basis. In fact, one of the best ways to lose weight, it used to be the old school dietitians were taught that you needed to be on 6 meals a day. 6 small meals a day, and then you would lose weight. The idea was that you wouldn't be as hungry, you could eat at frequent intervals, but you had to limit things, and it actually showed to produce some weight loss. But they did a randomized controlled trial recently of 2 meals a day versus 6 meals a day. Now, you had to be willing to either be randomized to one or the other. And they found out some people weren't willing to partake in that trial because they were afraid they were going to be randomized to 2 meals a day. Why were they afraid of that? Anyone want to guess? They didn't want to be hungry. Exactly. And they thought 2 meals a day, I'm going to be hungry a large portion of the day. So they did the study and they found out the people on 2 meals a day lost significantly more weight than the 6 meal a day people, but they also rated their hunger. Which group do you think was hungrier? The 6 meals by far were hungrier. They never were really satisfied because they were having to limit things on those 6 meal a day. And the 2 meal a dayers, particularly once they got used to it, they weren't hungry at all in between meals. They were able to fill up and do well, and they weren't hungry. Their body was actually able to adjust to the ketosis. And of course, that's a big term today. If you look up in the scientific literature, just look up intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is now known to be very healthy for a whole lot of conditions. That means where you have time-restricted feeding, you just eat at certain intervals and then you don't eat at other intervals, and your body will actually completely adjust over. So then they decided, well, okay, let's see which is the best 2 meal a day plan. Most people, if they're going to skip a meal, what meal do they skip? They skip breakfast. And so they said, okay, we'll randomize them to eating their first meal at noon and their second meal at 6 p.m. They knew they didn't want to have them eat too close to bedtime. What you eat in the 3 hours before bedtime turns into fat. It's not healthy for you. So they said, most people aren't going to go to bed till maybe 9 or after. So at least let's make them healthy and have them eat at least 3 hours before bedtime. So it was noon and 6 versus 7 a.m. The other group skipped supper. They were 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. Which group do you think lost more weight? It was the 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. They were actually had better cardiometabolic risk factors, less depression, etc. So when someone comes to our program after that fast, we'll put them on, based on the science, the 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. meal. And amazingly, since we're feeding them food that they need, they don't get hungry in the evening meal. And they are shocked about that. I didn't even miss it. Things were so busy and also, I just didn't feel like I had a need to eat. Now, once they go home, if they actually eat that evening meal when their body's adjusted over, it will just sit there. It won't even digest. And it's like, I made a big mistake. Why did I eat? And so it's actually a very healthy thing. It's not for everyone. We don't put everyone on the 7 a.m., 1 p.m. because, as mentioned, we have people that are anorexic and bulimics, and they need to actually gain some weight, and they need to eat healthier. And so we'll have them on a 3-meal-a-day program. But the ones who can take part in that 2-meal-a-day program, it turns on the positive neuroplasticity switches, and they're able to undergo changes better. Their brain changes quicker. Now, another area that turns on the positive neuroplasticity switches is one of our secret sauces, but it's not become so secret anymore because Dr. Huberman at Stanford talks about this a lot. And he's got the podcast that has, I think, the most people that listen to it, although he knows about New Start and he knows about Weimar University. And he just interviewed a good friend of mine, Dr. Schwelt, who talked to him more about Weimar University and New Start. But Dr. Huberman has talked about the effects of contrast hydrotherapy. Contrast hydrotherapy. Now, a little bit about that. When we started this program in the early 2000s, we were treating patients up in Sulphur, Oklahoma at the Lifestyle Center of America. And we had an 18-day program. Now, prior to that, I had only treated depression and anxiety in an outpatient setting, in our community clinic setting. And we developed an 8-week program where you come to us for 2 hours a week for 8 weeks in a row. And we normally didn't start seeing changes till about week 4. Of course, we're doing not big changes, but little changes every week. And so when we ran our first residential program, I was asked by the CEO of Lifestyle Center of America, because they weren't filling their programs with diabetes, to do a depression program. And I said, I'll do it on the basis of when you do the enrollment, tell them they're not going to be any better in 18 days. Really, to help severe depression and anxiety prior to our program, it was thought to take at least about a month before you would start noticing differences. And so I said, tell them they'll get on the program that will help them, but don't expect them to be any better in 18 days. I didn't think very many people would sign up for the program, but 29 people signed up for that first program at the Lifestyle Center of America. Women were more trusting. 28 women and only 1 man signed up for that program. And by the way, I'm still in touch with that 1 man. That was 2000, and he's still doing wonderfully well. He improved, and the women improved too, and so it surprised me. Wow, these people are getting better. By day 14, day 15, they were getting significantly better. And I thought, wow, when we put all these changes together at once, the brain starts to get better quicker. The next program we ran, might not have been the next, it might have been like three or four programs later. We're still doing these 18-day programs. And one woman at day 14 was not getting any better. She had been there 14 days. She was from Alaska. She was the wife of a dentist. And she saw others starting to get better. And she started to get pretty discouraged. And she came in with a very discouraged look. Dr. Nedley, I've invested all of this time. I'm away from my family. I'm here 14 days, and I am no better. So I talked with our staff, and I said, we need to put her through contrast hydrotherapy. So with contrast hydrotherapy, you get into this nice hot tub, 104 degrees. It's nice and relaxing. And then after about 3 minutes, you get into cold water. So it's not ice water, but it's like 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like the Pacific Ocean off of Seattle. It's cold. Now, Dr. Huberman has actually, since this time, Dr. Huberman has shown it's the heat shock proteins that actually help you get better, and it's the cold water particularly that helps. But he says very clearly it has to be uncomfortably cold, but not dangerously cold. They're in that uncomfortable cold for 1 minute. Then they go back to the hot for 3 minutes. Then back to the cold for a minute. And they do that cycle 3 times. We had her do that twice a day. At the end of that first day, now it's the day 15, everyone sees the look on her face on day 16, and she is not only getting better, she's better than the other ones that hadn't gone through hydro. And so they're saying, wait a minute, we want what she's getting before we leave here. And so everyone wanted to go through the contrast hydro because they saw the benefits. And after that program, we decided, you know what? Let's see if we can get people better even quicker by starting this on day one. And so this is one of the reasons why we have them learn that song for those of you that were here today. Before they get in their first hydro treatment, they sang, I don't like it, I don't like it, it's okay, I can stand it anyway, I can stand it anyway, I'm all right, I'm all right. And that helps them also, going through the hydro treatment actually helps them to manage their emotions better on other things as well. And so they do that hydro treatment. Some of them will like it the first time, and other ones, they're not liking it, but they certainly like the after effects of it, on what it does to the brain circulation, what the heat shock proteins are doing and actually helping the brain energy aspect of things. It's your own body warming up after the cold that actually starts to stimulate the brain in an antidepressant and anti-anxiety effect. In fact, it even works for schizophrenia. Now, for schizophrenia, I'd love to have a program just for schizophrenics. We don't allow schizophrenics into our depression and anxiety program, although we've treated schizophrenics here and there on an individual basis. But the worst mental health cases of psychosis and schizophrenia, if we put it even colder, down there to 45, keep them in there for about 8 minutes, their brain will actually normalize for a while. One man that we did that, young man, well, I say young, he was 30, but he had been schizophrenic for 10 years. We gave him a phone and he talked to his father, and his father said, I haven't had a conversation with my son like this since he was 18. I didn't think it was possible anymore. His brain actually started to normalize. And by the way, he loved the cold treatments. Now, it is dangerous if you get into something very cold and it's more than 8 minutes. So we don't allow the more than 8 minutes, but it's almost if he could live his life in there and stay there, we could actually kind of normalize things. But unfortunately, after an hour of this, the brain starts to revert back to the schizophrenic side of things. So those are two things that we do off the bat to start turning on the positive neuroplasticity switches. Our brains can improve significantly for the better, and they can also worsen depending on our habits and what we do with our brain. And so this is why it's very important to understand brain health. But today we're going to go through an exciting area of research that's critical to understand and take advantage to optimize your brain. As I mentioned earlier today, lifestyle medicine used to be called alternative medicine. You might have heard that term, or complementary medicine. But it really shouldn't be called that anymore, since lifestyle medicine has been shown to have more positive effects than medications, which I think pharmaceuticals today would best be classified as maybe alternative medicine or marginal medicine, something along that line, compared to the effects of nutrition and lifestyle on the brain. Now, I gave a diagram similar to this, but this is the synaptic area, and notice how those serotonin, or in this case, I think it's norepinephrine. If I look closely, yes, this is norepinephrine, is being vacuumed back up for further use. The SNRIs just come and block those reuptake channels to try to improve the norepinephrine activity, but it leaves the brain needing to make more norepinephrine because you're shorting that releasing neuron. So if we look at some of the nutrition hits, or nutrition effects. Nutrition is possibly the most overlooked cause of diminished mental power, depression, or anxiety, and it does have profound effects. Once a nutrition change is adopted, it takes how long to begin noticing a difference? 7 to 10 days. By the way, our program, as a result of the hydrotherapy, I think you heard about it earlier today, we no longer do an 18-day program, we do a 10-day program. Why? Because most people are far better in 10 days. It costs less for them to be there for only 10 days, and it makes it more doable. They only have to miss about 7 days of work if they're still working. because we start on a Thursday, we go through 2 weekends, so there's 4 days in those weekends, and then they actually go home on a Monday. And so it's a lot more affordable and a lot less time away from their work or family or school. There are some that are going to need, as I mentioned earlier, a full 18 days, so we still have that available if need be. But what a difference it made when we added hydrotherapy to this area of nutrition. Gradual improvement continues with maximum effects taking place 6 months after a consistent change has been made. And so the brain will continue to improve for 6 months. We have to tell them they're feeling better than they have felt maybe their entire life when they leave. And we have to say, you're going to even feel better in 2 weeks from now if you keep this up. The brain will continue to improve in its ability to make these neurotransmitters and the receptors. So let's take a look at some of the issues here that can affect our mental ability in a negative way. One of them is insufficient dietary tryptophan. Tryptophan is the least abundant amino acid in the diet, and it's one of those essential amino acids that we need to make serotonin. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Insufficient dietary tyrosine. We need that to make 2 very important neurotransmitters, norepinephrine and dopamine. Excess cholesterol will actually prevent our brains from improving, so we need to get that down. Excess arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid is present in fish, eggs, the egg yolks, and meat, and to some extent in dairy. And it's a pro-inflammatory molecule. In fact, there's a lot of people, if they have arthritis, they're taking anti-arachidonic acid pills. If you try to block arachidonic acid with pills, you're going to cause some unwanted side effects like kidney complications or stomach ulcers or things like that. And you don't have to worry about those complications if you just get arachidonic acid out of your diet. And so a plant-based diet will help with that arachidonic acid. Insufficient dietary folate is also very common. Many Americans are undersupplied in folate. Insufficient iron. We need enough iron, but not too much iron. Too much iron can cause problems. Not enough iron will affect 4 different neurotransmitters. Low omega-3 fatty acid intake. This is an essential fat that is too low in the majority of Americans' diets, and this is very important. Insufficient magnesium. Magnesium is very important for methylation in the body, as is zinc. Zinc is important for us to even make enough dopamine, or insufficient other nutrients that can play a role. So let's cover at least some of these here this evening. Let's go to the big one, tryptophan. Dietary tryptophan does not necessarily equal brain tryptophan. In fact, some people say, how do you know if I'm short in tryptophan? If we do a blood test, it may show that their tryptophan is okay, but tryptophan does not cross the blood-brain barrier on its own. It has to have a carrier. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So insufficient brain tryptophan is really the problem. And if we're not getting tryptophan, there's no way we can make enough serotonin. What does serotonin do? It helps you to feel calm under stress. It helps your mood to be elevated. It helps you to be able to have a sense of hope and be able to look forward to the future. It also turns into melatonin at night. That's why tryptophan has an effect on sleep, and it also turns into niacin, which is one of the B vitamins. The problem with it is it's the least abundant amino acid in the diet, and the conversion of tryptophan to 5-HTP, which is necessary in the brain before you can make serotonin, is inhibited by stress. So if you're not handling stress well, you actually make less serotonin. This is one of what we call these vicious feedback cycles. I've had individuals come to our program. They'll see me on, in fact, you can log on to our Instagram account. This is something that our son Nathan, who was here earlier today, handles all of these accounts. And Monday through Friday, we give you a 1-minute scientific update in regards to mental and physical health. And there are some people that are watching those updates, and they'll see the research, and they'll say, my brain biochemistry isn't working well. I'm going to go to Nedley so I can get all the analysis to find out what's wrong. So they'll come into the program and they'll say, Dr. Nedley, I'm here because you're the biochemical expert. I don't need counseling. My problems are real. So, the idea is if it's just biochemistry, going to counseling isn't going to help or anything like that. I just need my biochemistry fixed. And this is where I have to tell them, but if you're able to manage your stress better, you'll actually be able to produce more serotonin because you're going to be able to convert the tryptophan over to 5-HTP in the brain. And after I tell them that, then they're willing to go to the counseling and see how they can help in managing their emotions through their thought processes as well. But it's also inhibited by insulin resistance. What's another term for insulin resistance? Prediabetes. Can you, and the answer, of course, is you can have insulin resistance without diabetes, but diabetes is one of them. Prediabetes, and then another condition that's similar to prediabetes called metabolic syndrome. So we measure everyone's hemoglobin A1C. We want to see that 5.3 or less. And if not, they're going to need to do some things to help their insulin resistance to get enough tryptophan into the brain. Magnesium deficiency will also produce a problem in not making enough serotonin, as is B6 deficiency, lack of light. The light that we're having in this auditorium today is not enough to make serotonin. It has to be outdoor light that is bright, such as I was getting on the Katy Trail not long ago, not too far away from this church. How many of you have been on the Katy Trail? All right, a lot more people have been on the Katy Trail than to the Dallas Symphony. So when I asked this morning, I thought there'd be a lot more hands, and I think I only saw 2 that went up for that. But yeah, I would recommend you do the Katy Trail and the Dallas Symphony and get advantages of both of those. By the way, talk about dopamine hits. Yeah, I'm going to go back to music here for a little bit, speaking about the Dallas Symphony. But as I mentioned, we would take our office staff down there. And one of our receptionists that we hired, she's a very good receptionist. She said, classical music? She said, I'd like my husband to go, but there's no way he's going to listen to classical music. I said, what type of music does he like? And he said, it's heavy metal. It's got to be metal for him. I said, well, let me assure you that he will enjoy the Dallas Symphony Christmas concert. She says, well, I'm glad you told me that. I'm going to tell him that, see if I can get him to go. And he went to the Dallas Symphony Christmas concert. And afterwards, he couldn't quit talking about it. The children's choir and all of this. And so frontal lobe enhancing music is enjoyed by everybody. This is one of the reasons why it's probably not best to have heavy metal every week at a church, because there are some people, no matter how much they listen to heavy metal, are not going to enjoy it. It's going to be very aversive to them. But healthy music tends to be enjoyed by everybody, and so you can draw in all sorts of people when you actually do healthy music in a very excellent and positive way. And so, but lack of light, it needs to be, as mentioned, bright light. Now, what about in the wintertime? The wintertime, particularly up north, you're not getting much light. And so this is why winter depression is much more common, and we prevent that actually by having people have a medical grade light box, where it's first thing in the morning, they're exposed to this blue light box and they start their serotonin production right off the bat. And it also helps to reset their circadian rhythm so they don't have a sleep problem. So tryptophan has been shown to improve your general mood. It decreases quarrelsome behaviors and increases agreeable behaviors. So maybe we should have the entire church board go through a program where you have good tryptophan in there, because you're not going to have near the disagreements, and you'll have increased agreeable behaviors. Interestingly, I say that tongue in cheek, but Ellen White in that classic book, A Ministry of Healing, said one of the most frequent source of church trials is unhealthy diets of those that go to the church and are making decisions. She says it actually it depresses their frontal lobe so they can't see the big picture. And so if you can't see the big picture, it's hard to have unity on strategies and things like that. And so a diet is indeed important for even our own brains to be able to understand things well. Tryptophan has been shown to help premenstrual dysphoria, which is very common. It improves seasonal affective disorder, depression, insomnia, obstructive sleep apnea. This is very interesting. I found a lot of people are not aware of this. Very good study on obstructive sleep apnea. What's the most common treatment for obstructive sleep apnea? Anyone? CPAP masks. This is where you have this pressurized mask that you're wearing at home to prevent you from obstructing when you're sleeping. And something that works 80% of the time is getting down to your ideal weight. So weight loss will often take care of obstructive sleep apnea. But a lot of people don't realize that just getting enough tryptophan into the brain so you can make serotonin and melatonin will help you not to obstruct at night. Nicotine withdrawal. This is why we tell people this is the time when they come to our program, this is the time to get off of addictions. Nicotine is known as one of the most powerful addictions. One study showed that it's actually easier to get off opioids than it is nicotine. And there's a big rise in nicotine now with vaping and all sorts of things. Nicotine is a subtle frontal lobe suppressant, so we want to get people off of their nicotine. And they'll find it so easy when they come to our program and they're fed a diet where they can have that tryptophan into the brain, and they're starting to make the serotonin. It helps autism, helps cognitive function, helps social affiliation, and as mentioned, also helps sleep. Tryptophan, where is it? Well, oats are a good source. So normally we have oats for that breakfast meal. Notice tofu is in the top 10 sources. And so that's a pretty concentrated source. Notice flaxseed even higher yet. Walnuts, particularly black walnuts, higher yet. Sunflower seeds, this is one of the reasons why we will serve sunflower seeds at breakfast, put them on their cereal, and also at lunch to put them on their salads. Sesame seeds higher yet, and even higher yet, chia seeds are number 2. And we have chia seeds there in abundance for them as well. But number 1 are tied for number 1 are pumpkin seeds and squash seeds. Now, the reason why we say roasted, if it's raw, it'll still be number 1, but it won't be that high. So we took the highest source of the food, and if you roast it, you actually have more tryptophan available. But we don't just need the tryptophan, we also need it with carbohydrates and the right B vitamins. 3 critical dietary factors work together to improve mood and cognition. Tryptophan, carbs, these are natural carbs, and water-soluble vitamins and minerals that are important, some of which we've already mentioned, to be able to make that final conversion to serotonin. And there are some foods that are high in tryptophan but have no carbs. And it turns out those foods, the tryptophan can go into your muscle, but it's not going to go into your brain. It's a carbohydrate-mediated mechanism that helps the tryptophan go into the brain. So a lot of people are surprised when they come to our program to see all of these natural carbs, because some people are taught that all carbs are bad. I don't know if you've heard of people talking about all these different diets that eliminate carbs. There are bad carbs. Sugar and refined carbohydrates are not good, but unrefined ones, such that are present in grains and whole grains, are actually healthy for you. So large neutral amino acids compete with tryptophan to cross the blood-brain barrier. There are 6 large neutral amino acids that can prevent tryptophan from getting across because it's the same carrier. Notice this, tryptophan is transported into the brain by a transport system that is active toward all the large neutral amino acids, and tryptophan is the least abundant amino acid in protein. There's competition between the various amino acids for the transport system. So after the ingestion of a meal containing protein, the rise in the plasma level of the other large neutral amino acids will prevent the rise in plasma tryptophan from increasing brain tryptophan. The idea common in popular culture that a high protein food such as turkey will raise brain tryptophan and serotonin is unfortunately what? It's false. So this was presented in the Psychiatric Neuroscience Journal, and the title of the article was How to Increase Serotonin in the Human Brain Without Drugs. This has been actually traced. Turkey is a high tryptophan food, but it's not going to cross the blood-brain barrier. A lot of people think if I'm short in tryptophan, I need all sorts of protein. It turns out these protein mixtures, these protein supplements, all of this sort of thing, it's actually saturating those carriers with non-tryptophan amino acids and preventing tryptophan to come across. So we want enough tryptophan, we want enough protein, but we don't want too much. And so there's a problem with too much protein in our society today. A lot of people think they need to load up on protein. And it turns out that is the wrong thing as far as enhancing your mental health. If we lower the protein, get sufficient tryptophan, and have the carbs and the B vitamins there, they will do a lot better. So let's take a look at the foods and the ratios of those. You can see beef has tryptophan, but only 2.8% is tryptophan. All the rest are competitors. Tofu does better. Chicken and rice are about the same. You can see 4% for both. But this is just looking at the ratio of tryptophan to the 5 competing amino acids. It's not looking at the carb content. So if we take a look at what's going to get across the blood-brain barrier, the tryptophan in chicken or the tryptophan in rice, which one do you think is going to make it across? It's going to be rice because rice has carbs. Again, chicken, high in protein, high in fat, carbohydrate deficient food. Spinach has even more, pumpkin seeds more, but quinoa is up there. Flax seeds have a better ratio. Cauliflower has a great ratio. We have a great cauliflower soup that we serve that's very antidepressing in our program. Sweet potato, even higher. Weimar University actually grows organic sweet potatoes that are some of the best tasting, and they get to have this organic food. Grapes are actually a good source, and chia seeds actually top the list as far as getting tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier and why we utilize them in abundance in our program. Now let's take a look at tyrosine. It's a ditto effect as far as getting it into the brain. We need carbs, just like we need carbs for tryptophan to get it across, we need it for tyrosine as well. And those given tyrosine have significantly reduced headache, stress, fatigue, muscle aches, and sleepiness compared to controls. Improvements were noted in mood and mental states, happiness, mental clarity, hostility and tension. And cognitive tests also improved, math tests, coding map compass, pattern recognition in the tyrosine group. Why? Tyrosine is actually helping your norepinephrine and dopamine levels, and that's going to help your academics. You'll have the ability to focus better. Tyrosine increased feelings of vigor and improved blood pressure. Now, how does the world try to get you to improve your norepinephrine levels? They try to do it through the SNRI drugs, the Effexors, the Pristiques, there's even ADHD drugs that are using the SNRIs to get you to get more norepinephrine synaptic activity. So some of the non-stimulant ADHD drugs are utilizing this same pathway, but all of those drugs, if you look them up, will raise your blood pressure. So if you already have hypertension and you're put on these drugs to increase focus, your blood pressure is going to go up. And there's a lot of people with high blood pressure already. So it's really contraindicated. But notice if we take care of the underlying problem, which is not enough tyrosine in the brain, not only will you get stimulated, you'll be more, as notice, your mood state will go up, your mental clarity, your cognitive ability will go up, but your blood pressure actually goes down if you have hypertension. And that's when we know we're fixing the underlying problem, when we only have positive side effects and no negative side effects in utilizing the therapy. So let's take a look. It's a different type of foods that are high in tyrosine. You can see mustard greens, lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarters are not the hind leg of a small sheep. Does anyone know what lamb's quarters are? I thought you would know in Texas. We grow a lot of them in Oklahoma, where I lived for 26 years. Lamb's quarters are a green. They're actually a weed that grew in our garden in Oklahoma, and when Erica identified it at lamb's quarters, she would not pick that weed. She would wait until it was nice and tender. It's the highest source of calcium, actually, that you can find in any green is in lamb's quarters. And it's also a good food for tyrosine. Tomatoes, lima beans, tofu, but there's a higher food or a higher content of tyrosine in green soybeans that we call edamame. So edamame are a great source. You can see almonds, oats, sunflower seeds, wheat germ. This is why if you are not gluten sensitive, whole wheat is a healthy food for you. And it's been shown in a lot of trials to have an antidepressant effect. And part of it is simply due to its high tyrosine content. Now, if you're eating white bread, you are not getting the benefit. It's probably better not to eat than to eat white bread or refined grains. But if they're unrefined grains, they're actually quite healthy for you. They're also high in omega-3. Notice peanuts are up there near the top, and pumpkin seeds are at the top again. And so you can't go wrong with pumpkin seeds. Highest in tyrosine, highest in tryptophan. Tyrosine has 3 competing amino acids that try to get it to block coming into the brain. And the ones with the highest ratios here are sweet potatoes, flaxseed, chia seeds. We shouldn't have really beef on that list. It's accurate as far as the percentage is concerned. But once again, beef is a carbohydrate deficient food, so you're not going to really get that across the blood-brain barrier. Tofu, however, you will. Pumpkin seeds, you will. Soybeans, but there are 2 foods that are higher, watermelon and mustard greens. Now, we had a trucker actually from Texas, trying to think what area of Texas he was from. He was where they make big, giant parts for oil drilling. And there's a big Texas manufacturer down here that sells these parts for oil drilling all over the place. Dakota, New Mexico. And when 100 men are out there drilling for oil in another state, and this piece breaks that they're trying to install, they have to have those 100 men sit there until the new piece comes in. And so this guy was a trucker that would truck these large pieces of metal out there in the oil field to replace those parts. So he might get a call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he has to deliver it by the next morning because it's a lot cheaper to pay him to do that than it is to pay 100 men to sit around and do nothing. And so he had high anxiety. And so he came to me near the end of the program, and he said, Dr. Nedley, you've taken me off of caffeine. By the way, caffeine and anxiety don't go well together. And he says, I'm doing well. Anxiety is doing much better. But what's going to happen when I get that 4 p.m. phone call? And I've been up all day, and now I have to be up all night to drive to take this to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I said, well, once you're caffeine free for 2 weeks, you'll get stimulated virtually to the same degree by either mustard greens or watermelon. What do you think he chose? He chose watermelon, and he says it works like a charm. He carries it in his truck, and he says the watermelon keeps him awake without wiring him. The caffeine kept him awake, but he felt wired, and he didn't feel good, and he felt more anxious. And now with the watermelon, he can drive all night, He's not sleepy and he's not wired. But it is a cautionary note. Once you're caffeine free, if you have watermelon in the evening, you're going to want to stay up. And it may not actually be positive for your circadian rhythm. So the ironic conclusion, don't chow down on high protein sources to boost either tyrosine or tryptophan. Lower protein diets lead to more amino acids in the brain. And so emphasize carbohydrate-rich plant sources of nutrition. Now, another area that we alluded to earlier is high cholesterol. Patients with major depression tend to have significantly higher cholesterol levels than healthy adults. And depressed patients with elevated cholesterol levels have a poorer prognosis for treatment response. Lowering cholesterol improves depression and mood, as well as lowers impulsivity. I'm going to ask our audio visual man to turn me down for a moment so you don't have to hear this sound. Thank you very much, Adam. So notice, lowering cholesterol does what? Improves mood, as well as what? Lowers impulsivity. Now this highlights another enigma in the pharmaceutical industry. The SSRIs can improve mood, but they worsen impulsivity. And as a result, they have a big black box warning on them. Do you know what the big black box warning says? You give this patient this antidepressant, and it increases their risk of suicide. Suicide is often an impulsive act. And this is why, if someone is thinking of ending their life, no doctor should put them on an antidepressant. That's one of the questionnaires that they should look at, because many suicides take place the first month a person is placed on these drugs. Now, why? Because the impulsivity worsens before the mood improves. It takes antidepressants a long time to work too. We talked about nutrition, it'll take it a week. It takes at least a week for the antidepressants to work, often a month to improve the mood. So after the first month, it kind of balances out. The improved mood and the worsened impulsivity are about equal, so now the suicide rates are about the same as if you got on them. But notice, if we lower the cholesterol, it improves depression and lowers impulsivity. And so one of the statin manufacturers that makes statin drugs for lowering cholesterol decided they were going to take depressed people and put them on a statin. What did they find? Their suicide rates went down and their depression scores went down. So the statin actually helped, but the problem was that it worsened their fatigue levels. And many depressed people are already fatigued. Statins work by lowering your mitochondria activity. Mitochondria are energy-producing cells. But when we lower it through diet and not a statin, your energy goes up, your depression goes down, and your suicide rates go down. So this is a big win. You know, just in the last program, I have these statistics or these things in my mind for the last program that we had, but this is characteristic of all the programs. Out of the 20 patients that we had come in, 11 had suicidal thoughts. And some of them had suicidal thoughts every day before coming to the program. And at the end of the program, none of them had had any thoughts about ending their life for days before the program got it through. This is something that the psychiatric industry in general thinks is impossible. They will, when they admit people with suicidal thoughts, they will put them on what's called a safety plan to think of other ways to be able to help themselves emotionally rather than trying to take their own life. And we believe in safety plans. Safety plans are fine, but the reason why they really emphasize safety plans is they don't think the thoughts can get better. So you just have to find alternative ways, and they think those thoughts are going to stay with them. But when we take care of the underlying problem of the brain biochemistry, those thoughts will go away. They're not even in the radar screen. And so it's so much better to not have to even deal with the thoughts than to be thinking about safety plans, several times a week or several times a day. So let's take a look at the foods with cholesterol. Notice fruits, grains, nuts, vegetables. How much cholesterol? 0. If it's a plant or if it comes from a plant, it doesn't have cholesterol. Even skim milk has 4 milligrams of cholesterol. 2% milk, 18 milligrams. Whole milk, 33 milligrams. Egg white is the only animal product exception rule. Egg whites have no cholesterol. By the way, they don't have arachidonic acid either. Mayonnaise, regular mayonnaise has some. Of course, you can get soy mayonnaise that won't have any. Ice cream, 29 milligrams. Just a tablespoon of butter, 31 milligrams. But notice the egg yolk, 213 milligrams of cholesterol. Egg yolks are loaded with arachidonic acid and with cholesterol. So if you're going to eat eggs, I would recommend you throw away the yolk. A lot of people think, well, fish is the way to go. Tuna, 26 milligrams of cholesterol. There's a lot of people that think tuna is part of the plant kingdom and has no cholesterol. It actually has a liver. It's part of the animal kingdom. It also has a face. And it will raise a plant-based vegetarian's cholesterol levels. Clams even higher, crab higher yet. Chicken breasts. A lot of people think if they scrape the fat and the skin off their chicken, they have cholesterol-free chicken. But it has 73 milligrams per 3-ounce serving. Pork, 76, beef, 80, and notice, if you're getting your chicken at Chick-fil-A, where they don't scrape the fat and the skin off their chicken, you are getting more cholesterol than red meat. And a lot of people don't recognize that. It's a little bit more, but pretty close to red meat. A lot of people think, well, seafood is the way to go, but oyster has even more. Shrimp, higher. Kidney, the organ meats are very high. Beef kidney, 329. Liver, 410. Caviar, 500 milligrams per 3-ounce serving. And if you see anyone feasting on beef brains, you have to wonder about their intentions. 1 3-ounce serving, 1,697 milligrams of cholesterol. Now, Dr. Bruce Taylor came along and told us, as a result of studies that he had been doing in New York, that not all cholesterol that we're eating is the same. We used to think it's the same because cholesterol will raise your blood cholesterol, no matter where the source or where it comes from. But how did he figure this out? This is why it's always good to have students with us. Sometimes we learn from our patients and sometimes we learn from our students. But these students had to they had to do a study. Most studies are not publishable, but this one was a study that they had to do before graduating from medical school. Every doctor should do a study so they know at least how it's done and all of that in the scientific literature. So you can group up in groups of 4 students and come together and do a study. But it had to be a study that no one had done before. And so they looked the medical literature over, and they found out that no one had fed pure cholesterol to rabbits and monkeys before. So they decided they were going to see if the IRB would pass it at their university there in Long Island, very close to Manhattan. And they found out that the university gave them a green light. They could feed pure cholesterol to rabbits and monkeys. So they came to Dr. Taylor and told him, we want cholesterol. You're the cholesterol researcher. Do you have any cholesterol? And he said, yeah, I've got cholesterol. It's been in that bucket for a while, but you can use it. It's pure cholesterol. So they fed rabbits and monkeys pure cholesterol, and within a few weeks, these poor monkeys and rabbits started having heart attacks and strokes. So they wrote up the data, and they showed all of the data, showed that pure cholesterol is bad, and they were able to graduate. But Dr. Taylor was thinking, just a few weeks. Cholesterol is bad. It shouldn't have been that bad. So then he started thinking about that bucket he had given him. The bucket had been there for a while of cholesterol, had been exposed to the air, and had become discolored. And he thought, I wonder if it's the oxidized cholesterol that was the problem. And so then he decided, the students are gone now, but he's deciding to do a study himself. He's going to feed pure cholesterol to rabbits and monkeys where the cholesterol has never been exposed to the air. It's called non-oxidized cholesterol. It's a clear, waxy substance. And he fed it to them for weeks. He looked in their arteries, no damage, no heart attacks, no strokes. And then he started to realize, okay, people aren't just eating oxidized cholesterol or not oxidized, they're eating food. So then he began to feed just this food to monkeys. 24 hours later, he would come in and count the dead cells in their aorta. Doesn't take long for the damage to be done. And he found out the 3 most damaging foods for our arteries. Anyone want to guess what the number 1 damaging food is? Foods containing the most oxidized cholesterol. Number 1 are custards. What are custards? What are they made out of? Milk, sugar, eggs. When you put eggs, milk, and sugar together, you are going to heavily oxidize it, and it's going to be particularly damaging. What's the most famous or what most common custard consumed by Americans? Ice cream. Good old-fashioned ice cream is the number 1 dangerous food for your arteries. One of our former board members at Weimar University, he actually made 32 flavors of ice cream, 1 more than Baskin-Robbins, and on the street test, it actually was rated better than ice cream, and it had no milk, eggs, or sugar. How did he make it taste so good and so creamy? Anyone want to guess what the base was? Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it too. Pastor Caesar says prayer. It was oats. And you can go to Whole Foods and buy, we can't say it's ice cream, 32 different flavors, and it won't damage your arteries at all. If you don't have cholesterol in it, you don't have to worry about oxidized cholesterol in it. And of course, so that means we don't have to necessarily sacrifice taste in order to have healthy food. Second most damaging was pancake mix. What is pancake mix made out of? Eggs and flour. So and of course it's powdered up. Actually, I hate to tell you the brand, but the brand that he used was the most popular brand in America, Aunt Jemima's pancake mix. And when you have the powdered eggs, you're heavily oxidizing it, and it's causing significant damage. This is one of the reasons why Erica, in her cookbook, Brighten Up Breakfast, she has 4 pancake recipes, none of them with any cholesterol. And they're healthy. They're going to get tryptophan and tyrosine in, and they'll be even tastier than Aunt Jemima's. Third, Parmesan cheese. Why was Parmesan even worse? Because you're powdering it up. You're putting it in those powdered, little area to put it on whatever dish that you have, and it's high in oxidized cholesterol. That's not a misprint. There was actually another food that was tied with being the worst for number 3, and that was lard. And so we all know lard is bad. And so it's important for us also to recognize these sources. By the way, in the book Ministry of Healing, that classic book that scientists today state that there's never been anything in this book disproven by science, we've continued to prove it correctly. In the book Ministry of Healing, Ellen White said, especially harmful, she used that term, especially harmful is where milk, eggs, and sugar are combined. And now we know it indeed is especially harmful. Vitamin C from fruits and vegetable sources are associated with less depressive symptoms in the general population. In fact, oranges have been shown, just 1 orange a day have been shown to improve your serotonin levels. And it's kind of interesting We have more serotonin problems in the winter and when are oranges ripe and available? It's in the winter, so that in season can actually help prevent seasonal depression. Adequate intake of vitamin C has been found to improve attention, work productivity, work engagement, and vitality. Now you would think, well, when people come to your program, Dr. Nedley, don't you put them on the antioxidant vitamins? Just load them up with these pills, vitamin A, C, and E. Those are the 3 antioxidant vitamins. But we don't do that. Why don't we? Because of this. Eating plant foods in their whole form provides great nutritional benefits. Plant foods exceed their component parts. For instance, 1 cup of kale has 50 milligrams of vitamin C and 13 units of vitamin E. Kale is loaded with those antioxidants, but notice this. The antioxidant potential of 1 cup of kale is equal to 800 milligrams of vitamin C and 1,100 units of vitamin E. So this is why we're feeding them the antioxidant foods instead of the antioxidant vitamins. So antioxidants reduce the breakdown of neurotransmitters, improve both serotonin and dopamine concentrations, and isoflavones, which are present in soy, are especially good for the mental health of women in menopause. Antioxidant trials produce improved depression and anxiety scores and quality of life. The Human Nutrition Laboratory in Baltimore, Maryland, did a study on the top 10 antioxidant vegetables. Number 10, eggplant. Eggplant is loaded with antioxidants, and a recent study came out, and I've seen this in my clinical practice significantly. Eggplant is the only plant food that actually has acetylcholine in it. There are other foods that have choline, but not acetylcholine. So just a serving of eggplant will give you 2.3 milligrams of acetylcholine. What does that do? It relaxes your blood vessels and lowers your blood pressure. So 1,200 milligrams of eggplant powder a day is as potent as an antihypertensive without any of the side effects. And it can also, of course, help your mental health because of its antioxidant potential. Number 9 is corn. Number 8, onions. Number 7, red bell pepper, loaded with antioxidants. Very humble vegetable, but yet loaded with antioxidants is beets. By the way, beet powder has another substance in it that also lowers your blood pressure. So you've already heard of 2 natural ways of lowering your blood pressure, eggplants and beets. Number 5, broccoli in the top 5. Number 4, Brussels sprouts. If you don't like Brussels sprouts, come to Weimar University. Our chef will feed you Brussels sprouts that everybody likes. It's the way you prepare them. Number 3, spinach. Number 2, kale. Anyone want to guess? By the way, kale is my favorite green, at least the way Erica makes it. So every program she teaches people how to make kale very quickly, within about 3 or 4 minutes, and it is tasty. Everybody enjoys that kale. Anyone want to guess what number 1 is? The number 1 antioxidant vegetable? Garlic. That's right. One of the advantages of being married to a Romanian is every entree starts out with 4 cloves of garlic. So, what about the top antioxidant fruits? Number 10, grapefruit. Number 9, kiwi. Number 8, cherries. Number 7, red grapes. Number 6, oranges. Even higher than oranges. It's a humble fruit, but loaded with antioxidants, plums. And all of the top 4 are in one particular family of fruits called, anyone want to guess what family it is? The berry family, that's right. Number 4, raspberries. Number 3, strawberries. Number 2, blackberries. And number 1, Blueberries are indeed number one. And by the way, they've even done studies on the types of blueberries that are highest. Types of blueberries that are highest are your wild, small blueberries, loaded with antioxidants, those huckleberries, or those small blueberries actually, it's those smaller ones that we put in the skins that are in that supplement that somebody got earlier today called Focus. And that actually has been shown to improve your focus within 90 minutes of consuming it, and also improve your self-control. So, as effective as antidepressant alone or in combination to SSRIs and TCA medicine is the mineral zinc. 2 weeks of zinc supplementation increases the HT1 and HT2 receptors. So it not only helps us to produce, but it also helps build up our receptors. So I pay attention when it's a receptor buildup. It's been shown to improve ADHD symptoms as well. Foods high in zinc: sunflower seeds, pecans, sesame seed butter, known as tahini, cashews, pine nuts, wild rice, and notice the top again, pumpkin seeds, and that's often cheaper than the ones beneath that. Magnesium, an important mineral that increases brain serotonin levels, can improve depression and anxiety in just 2 weeks. 500 milligrams 4 times a day, or 248 milligrams per day of elemental magnesium per day. It's been shown to produce a statistically significant improvement in depression and anxiety. It helps with methylation, and it augments also GABA. GABA is the neuroinhibitory neurotransmitter. So instead of getting on benzos, which are going to cause you to destroy your GABA manufacturing plant in your brain, why not try magnesium instead? The foods high in magnesium, you can see there near the top is spinach. You can see Swiss chard is also good, as are the legumes. Okra is a good source. Whole grains are also a good source, and even soy milk. Other foods that are not mentioned in here: kale has 74 milligrams per cup. Acorn squash, 88 milligrams. Chia seeds, 95 milligrams. Sesame seeds, 101. Flaxseed, 111. And there's one that we should have shown that's even higher than spinach. 2 sources are higher than spinach. Pumpkin seeds, and higher than pumpkin seeds are hemp seeds, 199 milligrams for just 1 ounce. So omega-3, we talked about that earlier. It's involved in brain development, function, and aging. Dietary deficiency is associated with higher risk of depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, dementia, ADHD, and autism. And we have to get omega-3 through the diet. We can't make it through other means. By the way, fish have to get it through their diet. Where do fish get it from? They get it from the plants of the waters. The algae and plant sources are the high sources of omega-3, particularly the cold ocean water. The ocean water up there by Greenland, teeming with long-chain omega-3s. Omega-3 is most abundantly used in the brain. And by the way, saturated fat, you'll hear some people say, for mental health, you ought to have coconut oil. Don't believe that. Coconut oil is very saturated, and it's not an essential fat. We don't need saturated fat in our diet. We do need omega-3. We need omega-6. Those are essential fats. There are fats that are essential to have in order to have a healthy life and to live. But coconut oil is not one of them. In fact, it will raise your cholesterol as much as butter will. And so this is why we avoid coconut oil. That doesn't mean avoid the coconut per se, because coconut strips on things are very healthy, but it takes a lot of coconuts to make a tablespoon of coconut oil. And so it's the coconut oil that's the problem. But this coconut milk that you see in the store, it's not just the coconut milk. They're going to add coconut oil to it. Look at the label. They're going to put coconut oil. So if you're in a tropical island and want to have someone climb up a tree and get you a coconut and drink it out of a straw, that's fine. But they shouldn't be refining the coconut oil and putting that in. But of course, they're doing that for the addictive nature, so you go back to them, et cetera, and it's not healthy for the brain. Benefits associated with omega-3: improved sense of well-being, increased vigor and energy, improved reaction time, improved attention, reducing depressive symptoms, enhanced cognitive function, better executive function, improves abstract thinking, increases resistance to depression, and can improve some of the aspects of ADHD, increases hippocampal volume and brain-derived neurotrophic factor. We talked about brain-derived neurotrophic factor from fasting, but it also can go up with omega-3, and it can improve your brain volume. In fact, there was a study done on people. The average person loses 0.5% of their brain volume per year after the age of 25. But if you're on omega-3, and particularly the long-chain omega-3s, which improve the structural integrity of your brain will not lose volume with age. So one of my most pet peeves is when the radiologist reads the scan and says, age-related volume loss of the brain. Our brain was not meant to shrink with age. Our muscles were meant to shrink with age. There's other things that slow down with aging in our physique, but our brain was designed to, even under the conditions that we're in, fallen human nature, our brains were designed to stay sharp. So this whole idea of age-related cognitive decline is a misnomer. I have a friend of mine who's 101 years old, drives himself around, still has the reflexes to be able to do that. He actually drives a red sports car around town. He travels internationally by himself. He'll travel and coach. He speaks from all over the world. He's a nutritionist, and his mind is as sharp as can be. He can tell you everything that happened to him that day, even the new people he met and their names and what their occupations are and all of those things. His brain is very sharp, but he's been on a program such as we've been talking about. He's been on a 2-meal-a-day program where he has ketosis at night. Ketosis helps to keep your brain sharp. And he's also on a plant-based diet, and he makes sure he gets his omega-3 intake in. And so don't put up with brain loss with age. If you're starting to notice that your brain function's going down, please get some help, see what's going on, because that is not a normal part of aging. Other benefits associated with omega-3: it improves your memory, lowers your risk of dementia. Among the elderly, improved ability to take care of daily duties. We talked about the large brain volume, and it even prevents neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. In fact, I just did a 1-minute update this last week. It'll probably be coming out within the next month on our Instagram account on natural ways of treating Parkinson's or early Parkinson's. And I talked about multiple ways, including 4 supplements, but this was one of the supplements I mentioned. The long-chain omega-3s can help protect that Parkinson's from getting worse. And notice it improves IQ in babies and mothers who breastfeed and get adequate amounts in their diet. The formulas today, there's only one of them that has omega-3, and it has DHA. Why does the government not allow you to put omega-3 from fish into the formulas? Anyone want to guess? Because of mercury. That's exactly right. You can't, there's no such thing as mercury-free fish oil. Don't believe that when you see it on the bottle. There is a mechanism that can remove over 90% of the mercury. There's a company that's patented it, and they actually offer an omega-3 supplement from fish, which is lower in mercury than anywhere else, but it's called Lovesa. It'll cost you $240 a month to take their supplement. But you'll get far less mercury by eating the algae omega, and it's far less expensive. You know, you might pay $40 for a month's supply instead of $240. and you'll have far less mercury. And so they only allow that one company to put in DHA from algae. They don't allow fish oil. But the other formulas don't even have omega-3. And this is why studies show that if you have a healthy mother and you have breastfed from that mother, your IQ is going to be significantly higher. And the longer you breastfeed, the higher your IQ goes up as an adult. And I'm hesitant to say this, but 6 months was better than 2 months. 1 year was better than 6 months. 2 years was better than 1 year. 3 years was even better than 2 years. And I wouldn't recommend this necessarily for other reasons. I think you probably can, get the benefits in somewhere in that 2 to 3 year old range. But the study actually showed going all the way up to 7 years of age improved the IQ. So once they're 2 or 3, just get them on the omega-3 themselves. And you don't necessarily have to have them 6 or 7 still consuming mother's breast milk. Toxic hits, mercury. The connection between eating fish and mercury levels in bodies is so strong that researchers seeking to determine mercury exposure among groups of people often look at only one dietary factor, fish consumption. And the risk of biomagnification is real. This is Clear Lake, California, north of San Francisco, very rural place. In fact, some of the most rural places in America you wouldn't guess, but they're in California. Northern California, once you go about 100 miles north of San Francisco, you can be hours without even being able to get to a grocery store. It is so rural and so unpopulated there. And one of those lakes, healthy lake, a lot of fish come out of it, or at least it was thought to be healthy, has a little DDT in it. Where did the DDT come from? It was an insecticide to get rid of the mosquito population up there. And it got into the lake water, 0.02 parts per million in the lake water. But notice the phytoplankton, 5 parts per million. The herbivorous fish, 40 to 300 parts per million. And the carnivorous fish, which is what you're actually fishing, the bigger fish that eat the smaller fish, 2,500 parts per million of DDT. The same exact pattern we'll see with mercury. And so fish is one of the most toxic food supplies. It used to be a healthy way to get your omega-3 100 years ago. But due to all of the toxins in our society, you can't find mercury-free fish or other toxins that are not present in the fish. And what does mercury do? That's a list of all of the problems it causes. And this is why the recent studies are actually showing the risks of fish outweigh the benefits, even though they have omega-3. So, and we actually did a study on thousands of patients as well, and we found out the more fish consumption, the more depression and anxiety. And that's gone along with other studies as well. So they used to tell people to eat fish if they had depression because of omega-3. That was decades ago. Now the EPA is recommending everybody eat less fish because of this present toxin. And so we want to get our omega-3 without the fish. So how can we do this? There are plant sources of omega-3. Notice even blueberries have omega-3. Spinach has some. Pecans have more. Kale has almost double the omega-3 that spinach has. Red bell pepper is loaded. One whole avocado has 822 milligrams. Then there are high sources. Green soybeans. Your mature soybeans are high in omega-6. Your green soybeans are high in omega-3. Wheat germ oil, high in omega-3. If you're eating refined bread, you're getting none of that omega-3. Hemp seeds are an excellent source. They're number 4. Walnuts are number 3. Chia seeds are number 2. And more omega-3 than fish, any fish you'll find, is flaxseed. And this is one of the reasons why when people come to our program, we're giving them a tablespoon of flaxseed about 3 times a day. One of our guests missed that lecture because it's actually one of the introductory lectures. We want you to get your flaxseed to get these nutrients. and they heard it from someone else, and they thought it was 3 tablespoons 3 times a day. If you're eating 3 tablespoons of flaxseed 3 times a day, it will act as a flaxative. And so they were having bowel movements and having to try to get off the trail in Weimar and eliminate. And I said, it's this flaxseed. And we asked, how much are you getting? Well, getting 3 tablespoons for every meal. No, it was 1 tablespoon a meal, 3 tablespoons for the day. And that way you can avoid that flaxative effect. So choosing the best diet. Many people think the keto diet. Yes, the keto diet has some benefits, the BDNF, the burning of fat, but you're not going to get adequate amounts of serotonin. You're not going to get adequate amounts of norepinephrine and dopamine, and you're also going to get arachidonic acid, and you won't have those antioxidant effects. The paleo diet also has been shown not to have the healthiest diet. Atkins diet also has been X'd out. There's only one diet in randomized controlled trials that showed improvement in depression and anxiety in as little as 2 weeks. And that is the whole food, plant-based diet. And that's why when people come to our program, we introduce them to the whole food, plant-based diet. And sometimes they'll think, well, you know, is Dr. Nedley cherry picking? What about the Mediterranean diet? What about all these other diets? I'm not cherry picking when there's only one cherry. There's only one diet that's shown in randomized controlled trials to improvement in depression and anxiety in 2 weeks, and that's the plant-based diet. Now, the Mediterranean diet will improve it statistically in 3 months. That's not 2 weeks, and it won't improve it as much as the plant-based diet is. So let's give them the best. We're wanting to do everything we can to try to get their brains better, and this is a major part of it. The advantage, no arachidonic acid. You won't get inflammation this way. No cholesterol, high in antioxidants, better tryptophan and tyrosine uptake, and that's just a small view of the benefits. One of the other benefits, far less acidic. Acidic foods are related with depression and anxiety. Meat is acidic. And one of the things that we don't utilize in our program because of this as well is vinegar. Vinegar is quite acidic as well, and it doesn't come out well as far as depression and anxiety is concerned. It might help in regards to a few other things like that, but we want to get rid of the acidic foods. And by the way, do you know what is as acidic as meat? In fact, it's been shown to be a little more acidic. We also don't utilize in our program cheese. Cheese is a very high acid food. And so it's one of the reasons why we don't utilize that in our program. Plus, it's addictive, high in saturated fat. It will increase your cholesterol significantly. And of course, we feed them breakfast. In fact, many studies have shown skipping breakfast is associated with depression, decreased happiness, loneliness, sleep problems, and lower academic achievement. There was a nice study showing that if kids would just eat a healthy breakfast, their GPA would go up considerably, their test scores would go up considerably, and less risky behavior. The mental health advantages, lower levels of depression and stress, better cognitive performance, better scholastic scores, and even their creativity went up, their frontal lobe. So we believe breakfast is actually the healthiest and best meal of the day when it's prepared well, and that's why Erica emphasized that Brighten Up Breakfast book. There are also some other vitamins that are very important. The common mediator of the effects of B12 and folate deficiency is reduced S-adenosylmethionine. This is what is used to make the final step in dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Correction of folate and B12 deficiencies may alleviate depressive symptoms and augment the response to antidepressant therapy, perhaps because of the resultant increase in SAMe concentrations. As I told you, folate is undersupplied in the typical American's diet. The US government says you need 400 micrograms a day. That's how much you need if you're a pregnant female to prevent a neural tube defect. So all of the prenatals, the consistent thing in prenatals is folate to make sure the women are getting enough folate. But for optimal brain health, you need actually 1,000 micrograms of folate a day. And you can't get that from animal sources. Animal sources are extremely poor in folate, one of the reasons why it's undersupplied in our society today. But notice spinach has folate, mustard greens have it, asparagus 243 milligrams, legumes are high in it, black beans, pinto beans, lentils, and black-eyed peas top the list. And so we want people to be able to get their greens and their legumes. And by the way, in the societies that live the longest, so-called blue zones, the one characteristic in their diet, they had a lot of similar characteristics, very little meat, very little animal foods, but the one characteristic that was most highly related to longevity was the consumption of legumes. So the beans are particularly very important when it comes to overall health and longevity. So nutrition and mental health. I mentioned this earlier. This came from the Lancet Psychiatry, one of the most prestigious psychiatric journals published in Europe. Now is the time for the recognition of the importance of nutrition and nutrient supplementation in psychiatry. Nutritional medicine should now be considered as a mainstream element of psychiatric practice. There are other things that I could have mentioned here today. I'd said I would mention this, so I am going to mention it. That substance that gives you the benefits of marijuana without the risks. By the way, a lot of times people think, hey, the benefits are just eating the cannabis and filtering out all the THC. THC content is higher in marijuana than it's ever been. That's the psychoactive ingredient. And you can't get all of the THC out of the CBD. So don't believe this THC-free stuff, because we'll have people on this cannabis and we'll test their urine, and we're testing their urine for THC and it lights up. You won't get your job if they're wanting you to be marijuana free for your job. And that's also the risk factor element. But there are foods that have cannabis with no THC. And one of those foods that's very high in helping you with anxiety, it's actually been shown to be equivalent to lorazepam in helping anxiety, far better than marijuana, because THC is going to worsen your anxiety, and it'll worsen those other things, is an oil called Selexon. Where does Selexon come from? It comes from lavender oil. And that lavender oil is going to have the benefits. It'll produce an anti-anxiety, antidepressant effect without depressing the frontal lobe. You take cannabis before you go into your test for test anxiety, and your test scores will go down even though you might feel better while you're taking the test. But with Selexon, you'll feel better and your test scores will go up, because it's not a frontal lobe suppressant. It actually helps to enhance the frontal lobe, so it'll help you with problem solving. So that's something very important. And we might direct some other supplements. The ADHD supplement that we utilize at Focus has memophenol, Bacopa, Monieri. If you look those two up, there's many randomized controlled trials showing the benefit of Focus for even kids for their ADHD. And it's been shown in the elderly to back up their memory the way it used to be 10 years earlier if they start to suffer cognitive decline. And so there are certain supplements that we might direct for certain things, but in general, diet is even more important than supplements. And that's why it says nutritional medicine should be considered as a mainstream element of psychiatric practice. You can go to nedleyhealth.com to find a lot of other resources. And I'd like to open it up just a few minutes in case you have questions and clarifications here tonight. Any questions before we conclude here tonight?
You spoke about the importance of eating whole grains. We have learned this, like for you, the church is very well known about that. But lately, a lot of information in the media is coming up about this, about the lectins in grains, and that is in the grains, and it's affecting our health. So that kind of, information makes it confusing. Also, there's a lot of information in media, like probably you know about this. Dr. Gundry is making this thing very popular, and he worked in Loma Linda, California, those hospitals. He came out of that. So I mean, I don't know, but that is out there in the world, and it's a big thing about the lectins causing leaky gut, and also. On the other side, there's people talking about, like, for example, you spoke about, there's people talking about the nightshade vegetables that they're not good for our health. The other thing is, like, if we eat a lot of, carbs or sweets, like, for example, fruits, they increase our, what is it called in the blood? The glucose in our blood, and that causes a lot of other issues. So a lot of this information that is being preached by doctors and stuff, it makes it confusing sometimes when you're trying to make better choices about health for you and your family.
So I think you're talking about several different things, but Dr. Gundry has become pretty popular, and he uses Loma Linda University as he was a cardiothoracic surgeon at Loma Linda University. Gundry is not a nutritionist. He's not a biochemist. He's a surgeon. And it's very clear for us who have had nutritional training that Gundry is not scientific. I'll just tell you that. Now, if you want to see the evidence for it, go to the site called nutritionfacts.org. Nutrition Facts is a very scientific site. It only recites peer-reviewed literature. And look up Gundry on nutritionfacts.org, and they will easily demonstrate in a 5-minute video that he is not scientific, nor is he citing peer-reviewed literature. And so I wouldn't, he might have some good things to say, but he's not an authoritative source at all when it comes to nutrition, nor is he an authoritative source when it comes to mental health. And he won't mention some of these things. Now, there's other doctors as well that believe you should be gluten-free. It's actually the most common diet that Americans have tried. If you ask an American, what diet have they ever tried? And over half of them will say they have tried a gluten-free diet. 30% of Americans, almost a third of people, avoid gluten. So they'll look for the labels that say gluten-free, thinking that gluten is somehow harmful. So gluten is a protein that's in wheat and barley and rye. And the myth is that gluten is inherently unhealthy. Here is the truth. Whole grain gluten is inherently healthy for most people. Has valuable sources of B vitamins, minerals, omega-3 fatty acids, while many gluten-free products lack such nutrients and have higher glycemic indices. A lot of these gluten-free substitutes are going to raise your blood sugar more. They don't have the vitamins, they don't have the omega-3, and they don't have the benefit. Another myth is that you should try a gluten-free diet before you see your doctor, because you might get better on gluten-free. Actually, the truth is a gluten-free diet will hinder the accuracy of the test for celiac disease. So it's actually better if you want to be if you actually do have a gluten sensitivity, that you be eating gluten before you see your doctor, so that he can accurately diagnose you with celiac disease. There are some people that need to completely avoid gluten. As a GI doctor, I'm very, this is almost 1% of the population have celiac disease. So if you're gluten sensitive, you have celiac disease. Most people that are gluten sensitive, however, have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which means it's not the gluten, it's actually often the phthalates or the pesticides that are being put in with the wheat. And so often people think they're wheat sensitive. It's not. They haven't been on the organic or the ancient grain wheat. Celiac disease, one of the myths is celiac disease is overdiagnosed. 80% of people actually who have it don't know that they have it. So let's take a look at the whole grain kernel. It includes bran, which is the hard outer shell, It contains fiber, minerals, and antioxidants. The endosperm is the middle layer, which is made mostly of carbs, but the germ is the inner layer that has vitamins, minerals, protein, and plant compounds. This is why we don't recommend refined grains, because then you're just getting the carbs without the bran and without the germ. And those two are the most beneficial parts of the whole grain. Refined grains lack both the bran and the germ. So if you take a look, these are the studies, partial list of the studies that show the benefits of whole grains. They're high in nutrients and fiber, lower your risk of heart disease. 10-year study in 17,000 adults observed that those who ate the highest proportion of whole grains in relation to total carb intake had a 47% lower risk of heart disease. Heart disease is still the #1 killer. In addition, it lowered the risk of stroke, reduced the risk of obesity. It did not increase the risk of obesity and reduced the risk of type 2 diabetes. In addition, it supports healthy digestion. Whole grains function as prebiotics, making your microbiome more diverse. And the microbiome is very important when it comes to brain health. It helps treat both constipation and diarrhea. And it reduces chronic inflammation. Randomized controlled trials replacing refined with whole grains reduce inflammatory markers. Also, women are less likely to die from inflammatory diseases. In addition, it reduces all-cause mortality. This idea that grains are a toxin and should be avoided is actually killing people. It's not saving people. And I actually don't think that Christ would have called himself the bread of life if bread was universally harmful as well. And it's also been shown to improve mental health considerably. Meta-analysis showed these are all the diseases that are helped by whole grain diets, and it reduces your risk of chronic disease and premature mortality. So any scientific guru that tells you to avoid grains and says that they're toxins and says that you should not consume them and you're not gluten sensitive is not scientific. There's a whole host of science that they're completely avoiding. Now, in regards to the diet that you talked about as well, see if we can at least get some of these answered here. The no lectin diet. Foods high in lectin, which is also a protein that supports cell development, communication, and immunity. Lectins are not universally harmful to us. Lectins are a protein that can actually be very healthy for us. Following foods are high in lectin: squash, legumes. If legumes were, I just told you about the benefits of legumes in regards to all sorts of health issues. If lectins were a poison that were actually causing disease, you should see beans, peas, lentils, and peanuts being associated with all sorts of diseases, and you don't see that unless someone is actually sensitive to peanuts. Nightshades vegetables such as eggplant, peppers, potatoes, and tomatoes have lectins, and this is why Gundry tells you to avoid them. Now, there are 15% of the people in this country that are sensitive to nightshades, so they can have inflammation due to nightshades, and they can even have arthritis symptoms. So he's right about a small group, but if you have osteoarthritis and we're not sure of the source, I might actually tell you to eliminate nightshades for about 2 or 3 months. If you don't get better, you don't have to eliminate them anymore. And but only 15% of people will get better on that lectin-free diet. Fruit, although the diet allows moderate amounts of in-season fruit, but fruit also have lectins, including blueberries. He'll show you blueberries that should never be consumed on his website, and it's kind of almost humorous that people are following this gentleman. By the way, this gentleman also has no idea of that book, Ministry of Healing. He's never read it. He's not, part of the or I should say he's not even a member. Loma Linda is known as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian university. He's not a Seventh-day Adventist Christian or anything like that. The low lectin foods is what he quotes recommends, and there are some low lectin foods that are indeed healthy for you. But if you want to find more information, go to nutritionfacts.org and they will tell you scientifically where things are at. Sorry for the long question, or long answer, but as you know, it's a very important one because there's a whole lot of people that are listening to Dr. Gundry and other grain avoidance experts that are not experts in their field, and you need more of a balance when you understand that. All right, is there anyone else with a question? Yes, go ahead.
Right here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. How do you balance out the plant food with the pesticides that's being sprayed across all the plant foods in order to keep the bugs out, and et cetera, et cetera? How do you balance that out? And another question is, for men, how do they avoid, how do I say, prostate problems
Okay.
in their diet?
Yeah, so let's answer the first question. What about pesticides in the fruits and vegetables and plant-based foods? Recent study came out looking at a keto diet where they basically have very low fruits and vegetable content and a plant-based content or plant-based diet. And guess who had more pesticides in their bloodstream? There's a lot more pesticides in animal foods. And a lot of people are not aware of that. The pesticide content in meat, the pesticide content in animal foods is significantly higher due to what we call biomagnification. So if they're using pesticides nearby and the runoff comes, it gets concentrated in the fat of animals. So 99% of meat eaters will have pesticides in their system, but only 8% of plant-based eaters will they be able to detect pesticides, even though they're eating fruits and vegetables that are not organically grown. But I would recommend organic vegetables because they have more bioflavonoids. By the way, the antioxidants in vegetables are the natural disease-fighting agents in fruits and vegetables. So if it's grown organically and they have to fight their own diseases, they actually have more of the nutrient content. So organic fruits and vegetables are a great way to go, and of course they won't have the pesticides as well. We have not only an organic farm at Weimar University, it's a certified organic farm, so all of our fruits and vegetables are organic, but it's also called a veganic farm. What is a veganic farm? This is where we're not putting beef manure and all of this sort of stuff in the farm, but we're using only plant-based fertilizer aspects of things. And so that's even a step higher in regards to improvement in your food content. But I don't want to scare people away. There are people that are not eating fruits and vegetables because they're afraid of pesticides and not recognizing they're getting more pesticides in the animal foods. Is there a question over here? Who has a microphone? Yes.
Yes, please. So this is great. I guess as we age, I appreciate the information of a diet for brain health. Also wondering too, as we age, would this also help with maintaining muscle mass and strengthening those joints and stuff as we age as well too? Or is there anything more that we should do outside of what was discussed here to help do that?
Okay, yeah, great question. So in general, what helps the brain is also going to help the heart and the other health. You know, Dr. Scharfenberg that I was telling you about, my friend, he walks on his own power. He'll walk, he'll actually kind of run uphill when he's at Weimar and chase me down. Dr. Nedley, he'll be saying, 100 years old, doing that. Now, one of the things that helped him was not only his plant-based diet, not only not eating in the evening, both of those will help, but he had another secret sauce. a lot of time outdoors. So outdoors, what helps protect your mitochondria, it's actually been shown to, there is a substance, anyone know the highest antioxidant substance known to mankind? Vitamin E is the most potent nutrient antioxidant. This is 30 times more potent than vitamin E. It's melatonin. Melatonin we make at night. When we go to bed early, we make double the amount of melatonin. That circulates, it's made by our brain, and it circulates through to help that antioxidant protect our mitochondria from being deteriorated. But what we didn't realize until recently was that near infrared light from the sun, half of the photons from the sun, we can't see the light, it's near infrared. It actually penetrates your skin, goes into your muscles, penetrates your bone, goes into your brain, and it improves intracellular melatonin, which protects the engines of your cell, which is the mitochondria, from burning out. Any engine can burn out, can get overheated. This is why any airplane engine has coolants, and we're trying to keep things cool to keep that engine lasting a long time. And your coolant, your natural coolant, is melatonin. And you get that melatonin from the sun. So he spent a lot of time with his fruit trees out there in the garden. He was there morning and evening, and his relatives were plant-based as well, but they all died in their late 80s, and he's still going 100 and more, and he says, I think it's my intracellular melatonin output that protected me. And there's now a lot of evidence that can be helpful. So if you want to protect your muscles from deteriorating, either spend a lot of time outdoors or get a near infrared light. They now have light generators. They're as long as your body, where just 15 minutes of exposure twice a day can help to maintain that. Now, as you age, it is still going to be worse. There's a reason why 60-year-olds aren't in any professional sports. No matter how much they try, there is going to be deterioration in muscle. The more you age, you'll find out that you're just having to exercise to maintain, because you'll lose it as you age. And he has lost a lot from when he was in his 60s or 70s, but not near as much as the average elderly person starts to age a lot quicker than he has. So great question. Oh, the prostate. Yeah, prostate health. Yeah.
Testosterone, where we get older, supposedly our testosterone level in males decreases. So it's always like you should increase your testosterone level as you get older for balance in your muscle fibers, etc. But yet, that may have an effect on the prostate.
Yeah, No, that's a good point. And so a lot of advertisements today are directed at men on their low T levels. And testosterone is, of course, great for men, but we don't want to have too much. Too much will increase anxiety, and it will also increase your risk of prostate cancer considerably, as well as spread of that prostate cancer. And so they call it male menopause when your testosterone is too low. But one of the secrets of raising your testosterone, we've done this in our in a trial that we did at Weimar University. Men coming in with low testosterone, 1 hour of that blue light every morning improves their luteinizing hormone in the brain, and luteinizing hormone tells their testicles to make more testosterone. And so they'll double their testosterone by an hour of blue light therapy. It's one of the reasons why farmers didn't have erectile dysfunction problems. They were out there early in the morning, getting that blue light, getting that luteinizing hormone, getting that testosterone. But with the indoor society, we're seeing males in their 30s and 40s with ED and not being able, and their testosterone levels being low. And it's one of those natural benefits of the sun. When we start seeing a lot of the benefits from sunlight, or this blue light or other things, I'm starting to realize why our ancient humanity were tempted to worship the sun, because it's a very underrated remedy of being outdoors and in the sun. Another thing that can help the testosterone, and this is why a lot of 30 and 40-year-old males are having low testosterone, is actually decreasing their sexual activity. It takes a week after sexual climax to have your testosterone level come back up to a high level. And it's been well known that if you want to increase your testosterone level, you actually abstain a little more. And the studies on, for instance, the fighters, the best predictor of the fighter that's going to win is the one that's gone the longest without having sex. And so many men are overdoing it, and it's causing significant issues in regards to their testosterone levels. Now, in regards to overall prostate health, Dr. Ornish, you can find this on nutritionfacts.org, he is known for reversing heart disease through diet and lifestyle, but then he did the study on prostate cancer. And if your Gleason score is 6 or less on your prostate biopsy, you can actually have no progression of your prostate cancer. It won't go beyond the gland by just getting on a low-fat, plant-based diet. And so diet itself has been shown to reverse or prevent the progression of prostate cancer, particularly when you have the phytoestrogens. Soy, for instance, really helps reduce the risk of prostate cancer. A male who drinks 1 glass of soy milk every day will have a 70% reduction in their risk of prostate cancer, for instance. And so some of those isoflavones can be helpful for men. If your Gleason score is greater than 6, then you need more than just diet, because it's already spread beyond the gland, and you're going to need some additional help for that. But you should still get on a low-fat, plant-based diet, because that will certainly help prevent the progression of that. And then we don't want too much testosterone around. In fact, if it's gone too far, your doctor will want to take away your testosterone by giving you shots to prevent that luteinizing hormone from working at all. And if your testicles aren't making testosterone anymore, the prostate cancer doesn't grow as much. All right, great question. I don't know who has the microphone. I'll take whoever has the microphone. Yes.
During Second World War, in the Pacific Islands, all the wounded soldiers were saved by supplementing them to the IV with plasma. But at a certain point, they ran out of plasma. And they were losing the soldiers, because that was the only way to save them, because they lose a lot of blood. So one of the nurses recommended, why don't we try coconut water? And guess what? They put the coconut water through the IV, and it works the same as plasma. And I read a lot of coconut water and then the coconut oil, all the best of it. So I've been consuming those. What is your information from scientific point about coconut water and coconut oil?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, coconut water, when you're not dumping coconut oil into it, I don't have a problem with that. And so, and it may be healthy for certain types of conditions. But coconut oil does raise your cholesterol. And so I would recommend that if you're consuming that product, get your cholesterol checked, because we might be going too high in the cholesterol. By the way, how does coconut oil raise your cholesterol without having cholesterol in it? It increases your liver's production of cholesterol. This is how saturated fat works. Your liver makes all the cholesterol you need. That's why you don't need any in your diet, because our body utilizes cholesterol, but it can make way too much. And saturated fat will increase our own liver's production of cholesterol, and that can produce its own set of problems. Yes, question here.
What is the best way to avoid the fat on the liver?
Yes, fatty liver disease. So very common. In fact, liver enzyme elevation, the top 3 reasons for it are alcohol, hepatitis C, and fatty liver. And fatty liver is now taking over as being even more common now than alcoholic liver disease. In fact, with our society today having its woke terminology, in the GI world, we're kind of curious about this, but the academics like to satisfy the woke crowd. And so it's no longer allowed to be called fatty liver disease, because it might make a person feel bad that they're eating too much fat, and so it kind of blames them for it. So what do they call it? Steatosis, or steatotic liver disease. To me, that's even more offensive because it means the same thing, but they just don't know what we're talking about. And so why not just be honest with them and help them to get the fat out of their diet? So one of the ways of doing it is lowering the sugar, lowering the fat intake. If you're overweight, losing weight. Insulin resistance is related to fatty liver disease, so getting on an exercise plan can be helpful. And then also going through the changing to a 2-meal-a-day program. If you're fasting in the evening, you don't accumulate that liver fat. And so those are the simple things that can start eliminating the fatty liver disease. Great questions you guys have, and we have another question.
Thank you, Doctor, for being here this evening. Really appreciate this information. My question is, so looking at what you're showing up on the slides, a lot of the foods is based for consumption, whether fruits, vegetables, wholesome foods. What is your take on juicing the foods? Should one be substituted for another? Can one be substituted for another? Or should we lean more on juicing? Should we lean more on eating whole foods?
Okay, yeah, great question. And it's actually healthier as far as staying healthy. If you're already healthy, it's better to actually eat the whole plant-based foods. Why is that the case? The case is because of the digestion positive effect of chewing. When we actually have salivary amylase, our mouth is where digestion begins, and there is saliva that's mixed in. We're gonna have a lot more saliva mixing in by chewing than swallowing a smoothie. And so that digestive element actually improves our gastric emptying significantly. It improves a whole lot of aspects of things. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm totally against juicing, because if we're trying to get a particular nutrient, I'll just give you, for instance, Crohn's disease. You know, if someone has Crohn's disease, one of the studies that's been shown to help them get into remission and stay into remission is to eat blueberry smoothies. Blueberries are very antioxidant, they're anti-inflammatory, and we can pack in a lot more blueberries when we put it in a smoothie than eating it in a number of bowls. And so there may be certain conditions, certain cancerous conditions that we're trying to get a particular nutrient in, that we might actually recommend juicing in order to be able to obtain that benefit. But in general, it's better to eat your whole plant foods, eaten whole, and let your digestive tract give you that additional health. Well, I think we're gonna have to wrap up. I will be over in the, Erica and my son Joel have a table out there. You can look at some of the things that are available. You can also follow us on nedleyhealth.com. And I can't tell you the Instagram site, but they might be able to tell you out there if you want to keep up with our 1-minute scientific updates that we do Monday through Friday. And so there'll be over 20 updates a month that you'll be able to come out with. And we stay on top of the nutrition and scientific literature. So if you want to be able to stay on top of it, we'd be glad to have you as a follower. And once again, you guys are welcome to Weimar University. If you can't come from a whole semester health program, I would recommend you come for our EQ Summit. In fact, 2 things I'd like to mention before closing. Every spring break, we have an Emotional Intelligence Summit. It starts at Thursday noon to a Sunday noon. And if you're a physician, you get continuing medical education credits. You don't have to be a physician. It's interesting for even the lay public. So we have a lot of interested lay public, people that have been through our programs or people that are putting on their programs, they come as well. And so we always have a new theme, and it's one of the highest rating. In fact, I haven't seen, there might be one out there, I haven't seen a higher rated conference anywhere than our Emotional Intelligence Summit. But if you have kids, I would recommend you come June 22 to Weimar. We have EQ Camp for Kids. This is where we enhance the emotional intelligence of your children anyone from 5 to 17, and then we have emotional intelligent parenting classes as well for the parents. And you come to Weimar University, it's an entire week, EQ camp for kids. We had 112 kids there last year, and that was the first year we did it. And there's going to be a large amount of kids there. Very fun. Music is a part of it. We're going to teach them how music can enhance it. The kids love it, and they rated it very high, as well as the parents. And so those are two brief times you can come and see the beautiful campus of Weimar University. Where do you fly into? Sacramento. There are 5 flights a day, DFW to Sacramento, direct flights back and forth, so you don't have to stop anywhere else. And if you call us ahead of time, we might even pick you up at the airport. It's not that far away. And you can come to the beautiful campus of Weimar and start to get a flavor of what the threefold ministry is like in real time at Weimar. Big thank you to the Dallas First Church and to Pastor Caesar, as well as Sandy, for inviting me here this weekend, and I hope it's been very helpful for you. And we want God to certainly bless you in health of body, mind, and soul. Thank you very much.
Well, once again, thank you, Dr. Nedley, and for the family as well. Big thank you for joining us this Saturday. I want to say thanks to Sandy for the incredible health ministries leadership that she's providing to our church. This is her second major event, and what a great ministry you are leading, and we are so thankful for your ministry. I would like to close with a word of prayer. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for making the time. I hope that this information will be a benefit for your family and for you to share with others. So let us pray for God's blessing upon us. Heavenly Father, as we start this new week, we want to give you, Lord, the authority over our lives in every aspect of our lives. We surrender to you, Heavenly Father, our hearts, our minds, and we ask for your Holy Spirit to dwell. We also ask you, Lord, that we will make our bodies the temple of your Holy Spirit, that we will commit to improve in areas that we can improve. We pray, Father, that you will give us the strength to make good decisions. And as we receive the power of your Holy Spirit, make us, Father, a good instrument of your love in the community that we live. Help us to be church outside of the church walls. You came to save us and to love us. Help us to be a church that will also do the same, that we can love you first and foremost, and also love those that you came to save. Lord, I pray a blessing upon the Nedley family. Thank you for bringing them here. And I pray, Father, for travel mercies back home and for the increase of the power of your Holy Spirit upon their lives. In the name of Jesus, amen. Foyer? Okay, so we can open the main. Okay, good. So we do have the Nedley family waiting for us there with materials if you like and more information.